All right, I'm Stan the Fan on Zoom, along with my buddy and former co-host of Inside Press Box, Gary Stein. And our special guest tonight is a man I've known for probably about 28, 29 years. I met him when he worked with the Washington Capitals. He's also worked for the Oakland A's, the Memphis Grizzlies, and the San Francisco 49ers. That doesn't mean he can't keep a job. His name is Andy Dolich. It means he's in great demand. Andy, how are you?
I'm great, and I hope you guys are in the twilight zone in which we live in the world. You're on one coast and I'm on the other, and there's a whole bunch of people in between scratching their heads trying to figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah, we're over on the East Coast in Baltimore, and Andy lives in the Bay Area and it's near San Francisco. Andy, I think you are really well situated to talk about this topic, about what the sports world will look like once somebody makes the break and starts actually playing games, because of your vast experience in years as a consultant and working for teams. I'd like to start with the topic. You sent me an article by a John Wilner, and it was the Pandemic Playbook. You were quoted in that by saying, right now, and I'm guessing this is from about a week or 10 days ago, right now, everybody seems to be individuals, like the league, like the NBA and the MLB and NFL. None of them are really communicating to one another. And Kentucky Derby, you bring up a point. How did they suddenly 3 weeks ago announce, well, we're going to have ours on September 5th? And it wasn't in conjunction even with their Triple Crown partners. So is there much communication going on between all the major entities?
Well, in simple answer to your question, at least with the horses, I'm not sure they're unionized. They don't have anybody that's repping them and going like, it could be cold then. I don't want to do that. I'm going to be summering in Keeneland. But to be serious and speaking to my colleagues in sports, I don't have a day job, which is terrific because I don't represent a brand. So I speak to people all across the country, and it seems to me literally like a 10-lane highway where every sport is in its own lane. People are not necessarily signaling correctly. Some are going 95, some are going 32, some are on their phones, and they're not talking together. We have a serious problem in our country, which can end in death. This isn't fun to talk about. And when you talk about the safety, the health and wellness of our fans, the players are incredibly important, but nobody really knows the answer to two specific questions: when and how. And I would think that the massive power of innovation, creativity, and smarts in all these leagues could get together and literally form a United Nations of sports. And I'm not going to get political, but I'm not talking about what President Trump has put together, which is a cosmetic group of people saying, hi, how you doing? There's so many missing pieces in that one. We could do a whole show on it. But I'm talking about the real decision makers, the networks, the sponsors, the teams, the owners, the Players Association, the hourly workers, the front office people, the police of certain cities. That needs to come together with a pandemic playbook. We surely don't have one in our country. And I want to see one of the top 122 teams in the Big Four sports saying, hey, Stan, Gary, here's our pandemic playbook. We had it written months ago. Don't think so.
Let me just follow up on that. And Gary knows this. One of the topics I was always fascinated with in Press Box, and we did do a mini cover story on it, was the major sports. If there's an airplane crash that would affect one team, there is a playbook, and nobody in the leagues likes to talk about it. We found this out when we tried to write it. But has there ever been a playbook, and I'm assuming in the future there will be, for individual sports, a playbook for how they can handle this?
Well, actually, I'd say yes, because if I'm correct, guys, Wimbledon, one of the most famous events in the world, has an insurance policy that specifically talked about a global pandemic.
Yeah.
And they, as far as I know today, they're the only sport, the only entity that really looked into the future and said, look, we could lose an event. I went through the Earthquake World Series. We've been through Katrina. We've been through 9/11. This has been talked about over and over. That was sport coming back after these tragedies had occurred in a particular market, or the riots in Baltimore and the only game that I can remember being played with no fans. But that was short term, and we got back to normal. This is not short term. We're heading towards 60,000, deaths. We have
we're over.
We got over
a million
today.
people infected, and sports is global. And if anybody tells me they've figured this out, just in terms of the medical and science part, no. And sports is just playing a role here and shouldn't get, in my view, too far ahead of itself.
Andy, let me ask you, just in general, when you talk about sports leagues opening up or sporting events coming back, like golf tournaments, Wimbledon, the Olympics even in 2021 now, perhaps. But just in general, when people are talking about opening up sports back again in the relatively near future, most all of the models seem to say that there should be or there will be no fans in attendance. My question to you as a presenter of sports, is that good for sports? Like, does baseball want to show itself, presenting itself as a game with no fans at it?
Well, we can make jokes. There are some teams that are already in social distance in terms of the crowds, but I won't go there. The answer to your question is this is a laboratory. We know that there are going to be games played at some point without fans. Shouldn't those leagues be so far ahead technologically, whether it's virtual reality, augmented reality, the digital tools that we have today? I'm not sure they are going to show. You give the NFL and ESPN credit for how they pulled the draft off. Very complicated. How many extra cameras will there be at a baseball game with no fans? Do we know? How is that going to be when somebody takes the pitcher, the reliever deep, wins the game in the ninth, the players are jumping around, there's zero atmosphere in the place.
Right.
Zero. And I'm looking at a parent of 3, a grandparent of 5 now. My total focus is the safety, the health and wellness of my family. I don't care who guarantees me what at a venue. And it doesn't have to be sports. It could be a concert. It could be a place with thousands of people. I'm going to be very conservative. And unless that crowd dynamic in any sport, and we're talking baseball now, can be replicated, which I think is one heck of a challenge, then I think it's a shrug of shoulders. Now, I understand the reason for it, because you want to start the flow again. You want to look in the future and say, we are going to be able to have fans back. Maybe not as many as we would have. We're going to do it gradually. And if we don't start now, then we got to wait till 21, or then we have to wait till the fall. And you and Stan talked about it at the beginning. We could be in a situation, September, October, November, where you're just hunkered down and you're watching 17 sports events from 19 different sports. One is a championship, one is a preseason game, one is a high school all-star game, and you got a migraine freaking headache.
We're talking with Andy Dolich, longtime executive in the world of sports, and he's a sports business consultant right now. Andy, one of the people I talked to did talk about something very interesting. Since 9/11, the thrust when you enter a stadium has been security of whether somebody's going to walk in with a device to injure people. But now with this, are we going to walk into stadiums and our temperature is going to be taken to ensure that we're not letting people in with 100-degree temperature?
Well, Stan, most security people would pull you out of line on general principle going to any game without taking your temperature. But seriously, I talked to an NFL stadium operations person with tremendous experience, and the concern that he talked about with fans coming back. I'm not talking about no fans in stands. How many medical type people do you need to hire above and beyond your ushers and ticket takers? This isn't, now everything is done electronically and you have a hashtag. What about that guy in line who, if we have social distancing, if we have some sort of facial protection, the guy goes, hey, I don't do that. He gets pulled out of line. What about your family? You're bringing 5 people to the game. Where are they sitting? What about the yahoos in front of you or behind you who are not following any of the guidelines? This person said that they might have to hire several hundred additional people with some sort of medical experience.
Wow.
So that you feel that you're safe. What really exists here is a level of trust. When we go to a professional sporting event, college, high school, we sort of trust that the people that are putting it on know what they're doing and have our best in their minds. Now we have a whole different situation because we're all looking at each other a little bit strange today. And there's class action lawyers that right now are going, hey, what a case this is going to be when a ballpark says, hey, everybody can come in and somebody's infected.
Gary and I were talking about that. That leads into the question you and I were talking about much earlier today, Gary. Why don't you ask Andy that question?
The question, well, I was actually going to ask him a different question.
But you were the one that brought that up to me, the idea that fans are supposed to have trust. They understand on the back of the ticket, it says if you're injured by a baseball,
right,
we're not at fault. But if they tell you it's safe to come into a game and 4 days later you're sick, what rights do the fans have at that point?
I mean, what liability, if any, Andy, do you think a team would have if they allowed fans in? Let's talk baseball for just a minute. And a fan contracted COVID, and now all of a sudden they have it, and they blame the team or the sport or the league. What happens in that situation?
The reason that I went into sports, Gary, is my law boards at American University, I think, were the 3rd worst quadrant when I was a senior. So I went, oh God, how am I going to?
Yeah, it's probably a good decision.
So I'm not a lawyer, but it comes back to simple human trust and the layers that we have. Let's take it simply. You have a state government, a city government, a regional government, a stadium authority, a league, a team, union people that might work at it, union baseball players, broadcast entities, food concessionaires, parking attendants.
Yeah.
Who is going to stand on the podium and say, hey, Stan, Gary, Andy, trust me, it's going to be fine. You know what? All due respect, I don't trust you, because the end result of this is not anything I'm going to trust other than control. In terms of these legal entanglements, it goes back to the complexity of this. All these other traumatic events that have hit us in sports in the last 20 or 30 years were, again, regional. I mean, 9/11 was a global event. In Washington, in New York, in a field in Pennsylvania, we went through the earthquake with people dying, but we could bounce back from that very quickly. You listen to the best and brightest. Some are saying, vaccine 1.5 years. Some are saying early in the next year. Some are saying you can get COVID again. As a parent, how are you supposed to explain this to your children and to your own partner in life as to what makes sense? And I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I've been in the happy toy store of sports for my life, and I only care about the fans. I mean, I love ball players. I love the people that I worked with. But if we don't have fans, we don't have a business.
Yeah. But Andy, let me switch it over to the ball players for just a minute. Going back to my question earlier, does baseball want to present itself in a way where there are no fans in the games? I think that's a legitimate question. But you could ask the same question about the competitiveness of the league in this type of situation. I mean, after all, it's the ball players that are going to have to compete. They're the ones that are going to have to figure it out, a way to make it a fun, competitive game. So my question is, especially for baseball, because they're right in the thick of the situation right now, they're going to need spring training. Who knows how long that's going to take. So it's a two-pronged question. If and when, for baseball, if they come back, how many games do you think they really have to play to make it a legitimate season? And if it turns out that when and if they come back, the play is uninspiring, then what happens to that relationship between the fans, the players and the owners, and the sport? I just see a lot of potential issues here everywhere.
Self-inflicted damage if they come back and there's a mistake. And the science, which is not perfect yet, and the scientists and the medical people will tell you it's not perfect yet. And you've got your product. Your product is the players. You must do everything in your power. I find it hard to believe that in all of sport, 100% of the players, even though they're under contract, are going to say, I'm fine, I'll do whatever you want.
Right.
If my family just had identical twins, you know, born 6 weeks before I'm going to play, I'd go, hey, trade me, get rid of me. I'm going to protect my family, and you can't guarantee that for me. I think that baseball and many other sports, and this sounds like heresy, should say not this year. We have much bigger issues. We're going to do everything in our massive power that we have. It's easy for me to say. I don't own one. I'm not working for one. And the money is significant. But many of these owners, their businesses are suffering. And it's not like games without fans, even though they'll get money from the networks. Money can always be negotiated, even at that level, hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars. You know, football is probably the only sport that doesn't need anybody in the stands to make money. But the fan element, the lack of that magical DNA that the fans have with the players, and more importantly, the players feed off the fans, I don't know how you're going to artificially create that environment. And then you're showing people an event that becomes very, very pedestrian, and you're hurting yourself.
Let me take the
I get it.
Let me take the tack, though. If they come back without fans, Andy, you've been around, both of us have been around long enough to know, to understand that televised baseball, when they first started televising games, they could only put cameras where they wouldn't be in the way of people, essentially. I mean, they've moved them around a little bit, but they've moved the fans around a little bit. But here they've got an opportunity to put on their own show. Is there a possibility we will see angles and actually be, in a weird way, more entertained by an unfettered view of baseball, of the game itself?
The answer is yes. And, you know, everybody thinks that analytics, metrics, today's age is better than ever before in promotions. You know, we all know a guy named Bill Veeck, right?
Yeah.
He's doing stuff 70 years ago that people are still doing today. And they go, what's a Bill Veeck? You know, you know, in predicting games, and he did it in a different fashion. Absolutely true story. The Oakland A's, we did a multi-year project with a public broadcasting station in the Bay Area, KQED, called Ball Game. And we did exactly what you just said, Stan. We turned the cameras around. We let the cameras go into the locker room, go into Sandy Alderson's office during game when he was talking to scouts, go into the press box, interview Tony La Russa during the game. This is in the early 80s, and we did it for a number of years. Okay.
That wasn't David Rubenstein's idea, was it?
No, it was my idea, but David, no, it was a number of people. A guy named Nat Katzman was the GM of the station. And what we did was we put the game up in the corner, right?
Right.
So we were helping them in fundraising, like all these PBS stations. One year, it was Roger Clemens versus Dave Stewart. So you know those battles. And Stu always won. Stu pitched a one-hitter against Boston, if I go back and look, in one of these games. And we switched it over. We literally switched it over because we knew what was happening. But that gave people such an insight. We all want to be the Wizard of Oz. You know, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I want to be behind the curtain. I want to be behind the door. And I can't wait to see what any of these sports are going to do, because now is the time to break the model and start completely looking at all of these as a laboratory experiment.
Yep.
That's what I would do.
Andy, from a marketing aspect for a minute, and that's kind of your bailiwick. You have done that for.
What is a bailiwick? I never knew what a bailiwick was.
I don't know what it is either, but I just picked it up in.
I'm gonna look it up when we're done,
It's a
Gary.
basket. It's a basket. It's a basket.
You were
Oh,
involved.
yeah, all right. Stan knows it's a
Back in the
bailiwick.
day when Billy Martin was hired for the Athletics, to manage them. Billy Ball, you were in on that marketing promotion. Of course, here in Baltimore, everybody
Hey,
knows.
new
There you
book,
go.
new book just came out this month.
came
I'm
out,
in
Dale
it, Dale
Tafoya.
Tafoya. Buy
And
your
that was
copy.
not rehearsed between you and I. Perfect. And of course, here in Baltimore, we remember back in '79, Orioles Magic.
Right.
Marketing happens when the games happen and the fans are into it, etc. So, if you're a marketer this year of a baseball team or really any sports entity, what do you do? Do you do nothing? What do you market exactly?
The answer to nothing is absolutely not. Now, there are going to be stories, and we see them every day in real life, which sports is. Sports is a storytelling medium. There'll be stories that will bubble up and be incredible that the three of us have no idea right now. Baseball, any sport. And Billy Ball, or so many of these unique and wonderful seasons or games, that comes from bottom up. That doesn't come from top down. It just happens. A player says something, somebody writes it, you or Stan say something on the radio, people pick up on it.
Yeah.
What I look at here, again, is the American community. We are lacking leadership and teamwork. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. We could use a major dose from coast to coast, from north to south, to get back to why sports is magical, because it's teamwork. And there's no better time to start showing some real teamwork now. And again, who are the heroes that we've seen in the last 3 months? They're people that we may have viewed as invisible previously. And they're changing our lives now. They're protecting us. They're helping us. So from a marketing standpoint, I wouldn't get too cute, because again, the ultimate fight that we're in here is pretty serious, and you have to be very, very careful. But I would pay incredible honor to these people.
Yeah.
I would be as community oriented as I could, and I absolutely would not do anything that's viewed as fake, cosmetic BS.
Andy Dolich is our guest here on Zoom. Andy, we want to try and keep these within a half hour, and we're bumping up against it. You have, as I pointed out, have worked all four major sports. I find the NBA and the NHL have the same issue. Baseball has a very separate issue because it hasn't started a season, and football seems to have the clearest path. But could you discuss that for a minute about the idea of resuming a season that was you were winding it down in hockey and basketball, baseball starting a season, and football having enough time, I think, to probably have the cleanest bill of health?
I think we need that great sports fan, Dr. Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking, to be on your next show to come up with some formula to figure this out. In a serious vein, you look at Adam Silver, and he has said, I am not making these decisions until medicine and science and government tell me we're right. So don't keep asking me every day, what are you doing? And baseball has come out with several different options that they've let out and let the people debate. We'll see it. It's somewhat confusing because once you bring something out in the media today, people believe that it could be real, and it might be real.
Almost like drinking Lysol or something, or injecting.
Oh yeah, you
Clorox.
definitely want to have a scrubbing bubbles Mai Tai for dinner tonight, right? But that aside, I think it's really, really important to take a step back, understand what we have here, which is, the greatest challenge that we've faced as a country. And sport, as I said before, this sounds kind of odd. Sports used to come in after the trauma, put its big, strong arms around a community and a sport and say, we're okay. I mean, Bush throwing the pitch, what we did in the World Series, the post-Katrina. Now sports, guys, is right in the middle of it. And to dictate what should be done as one entity and not to basically understand all the constituencies working together and making sure that we're all safe and we're not looking at this just as a dollars and cents circumstance, and we can get back to normalcy, but we should do it in as organized, logical steps as possible. Not put tactics ahead of strategy, but put strategy ahead of tactics.
Stan, do we have time
Gary,
for
you got
one
one
question?
last, you got one more question?
Yeah. Let me switch it over, Andy, a little bit to college football for just a minute.
Yeah.
Because I think that out of all the sports really that we've talked about, I think college football actually is in probably a dire position right now and very unique to its own game. So my question is, because college football is the driver of athletic sports programs across the country, are there unique challenges that college football is facing vis-a-vis their universities as opposed to professional sports and their fans, for instance?
And I talk to athletic directors, you go back and forth. A lot of schools, colleges don't know when they're going to start their semester of students coming back. Some are actually talking winter. Now, I don't know that for a fact. So are you going to bring your football team back to campus if your students aren't coming back until several months go by?
I don't think you can do it.
I'm a football player, and I go, I appreciate that I'm under scholarship, but I'm just like Susie and Bobby over there, who are my friends. You're bringing me back here? My NIL isn't getting paid on this. Yes, I have a scholarship, but I'm not putting myself in harm's way. And the last example that I think is just jumps out is SEC football, right? I know that the SEC is way more impactful than the Securities and Exchange Commission. It probably generates more money. You tell somebody in Baton Rouge or Tuscaloosa or any place else, oh, sorry, that game's not taking place this year. Whoa. You tell the Buckeyes, right, and Michigan, nah, we'll wait till next year, or no fans. That debate is going to be screaming, and it's going to be nasty. And we've seen already, people getting violent and protesting, how dare you? It's my American right to do this. It may be, but it's my American right to be safe at the same time. And can you guarantee me that I'm putting 120,000 people into Michigan Stadium for a big game and everybody's just cool? How long is the bratwurst line going to be? 4 days long? I mean,
At the bat, how about going to the
I don't want to be too serious, but we started off going about just the step-by-step of safety, bringing people in after we have these games with no fans in the stands. What is that going to be like? Is it vacuuming out all the energy? This is the greatest time on the positive side for leagues, broadcasters, marketers, to be as creative as they ever could instead of taking for granted what they had and just looking at the personal seat licenses and go, we're great.
Right.
Look, how many of us, before in wrapping up, how many of us 5-6 weeks ago had really heard of Zoom? Now, you might have, Andy. I had never used Zoom. It's opened up a whole new avenue of how to communicate with our fans.
Well, I think I told you this before, I'll wrap it up, but I do some writing. I try to have some sense of humor. I created something called SURF a few months ago called the Sports Executive Rehab Facility. This had nothing to do with COVID. This was just the craziness of the business. Napa Valley, the peaceful Napa Valley. Now I'm thinking, I'm thinking about something called DOZE, D-O-Z-E, which I will let you know about. But I think it comes down to the fact that, we need to deprogram obsessive Zoom engagers, right? Because in a few months, people are going to go, oh, I don't want to have another. Zoom is great, but wait to see does being created in a bucolic setting just near you.
The alliteration works with Dolich's does.
Yeah, no, this is great. We are all integrating ourselves and talking with people that we haven't talked to in years. And we're trying to figure out what's the best way to go forward.
Let's do this again when the games commence. For Gary Stein, Andy Dolich on the left coast, I'm Stan the Fan and Press Box. Reminder that you can watch Glenn Clark every day on Facebook Live at facebook.com/PressBoxSports. Or if you just want to listen, go to our website, PressBoxOnline.com/PressBoxOnline/radio. That's what it is. And news next Monday night, I'll be Zooming with Ross Grimsley again. And our guest will be number 29, Sweet Swinging Ken Singleton. That's it for tonight. And thank you for tuning in. Guys, talk to you soon.
Let's have some crabs, blue claws, not Dungeness, when we get